Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 21 of Show Us Your Kit. I'm joined by our first international guest. We've got Dave Stevens, or at ShakeFon. Have I said that right on Twitter?
Yep.
Yeah, from the Elm Park Royals podcast, so a Reading fan. So just tell us the story then. How is a Reading fan ended up in Colorado?
A question I get often. Surprisingly, I'm not the only one here. I met another one the other day, but moved out to the States for work about 13 years ago. I've moved around, lived in a different place, got a new job last year, which took me to Denver, and the first 24 years were all in Reading, so made an impression on me. Kept the support of the greatest team the world has ever seen, as the song goes.
So, I've got to ask you about your name as well. So, for people who are casual football fans, Elm Park, what's the significance with Reading there?
Yeah, for sure. So Elm Park was Reading's original ground. Technically not the first. They spent a bit of time at the cricket club back in the 1800s, but for a solid 100 years or so, a lot of older fans may remember heading down to Elm Park, which not quite the facilities of our current ground, but definitely much more in the heart of town. You weren't going out to the industrial estate, which I know a lot of away fans give us probably a fair bit of stick for. So Elm Park was meant a lot to a lot of the older Reading fans, and the person that started the Elm Park Royals podcast. Many happy memories starting his journey supporting the club back at that ground.
So, what's your view then of the Madejski itself? Is it still called the Madejski, or has it changed sponsors?
Still the Madejski, yeah. There's been rumours of it being sold off for sponsorship a number of times, but none of them seem to have legs, which is good. I don't really want to see that happen. Sir John Madejski, after whom it is named, at times when he was in charge, there were a couple of polarising opinions about him. He was very much a businessman, so he didn't spend big, and a lot of fans maybe gave him a little bit too much grief over that. But still called the Madejski, still one of my favorite places in the world. You had that thing with the Turf Moor joke being like, "That's your happy place." Like, how can Turf Moor be your happy place? Similar for me. Like I think nothing of finding a way to fly 5,000 miles back to spend some time with the Madejski. It's a good ground. I know people don't like the location. You get the soulless bowl accusations and everything else, but we had some good times in there. And when it's full, which again, attendance police are after us half the time as well, so it's not often full. It's a great place. It's a good stadium, and the players seem to like it. They talk about our facilities quite frequently.
I think it probably did play a part in your rise to the Premier League in that first promotion that you had, in that it was the first of these new build or purpose-built stadiums that came around in the late 90s. Was that a narrative at that time? Was it players were coming to play in this modern stadium?
It certainly seemed to be mentioned in most signing interviews. They'll be stood in the Madejski pitch side having their interview, and they'll look around. They're like, well, you come to a club and like the facilities are excellent, and playing in a stadium like this. So obviously, I'm not a professional footballer. I can't speak for them, but they seem to mention it. And I think that if you hear the stories, and we've had a couple of ex-players that played in the Elm Park days onto the podcast, when they share their memories of the facilities at Elm Park, I think it probably was quite a draw to get some of those players in.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's have a look at your first kit then, your first choice of Reading shirt.
Cool. So it'll surprise nobody. This is probably like the most cliched Reading choice, but I couldn't see past it. So we've got here the 05-06 season in the long sleeve for the connoisseur, which it's a season that is the stuff of dreams. For those that aren't aware, first time we ever got promoted to the Premier League, or the top flight of any form. Won the league with a record points total of 106. Still hasn't been beaten. You came close, but thanks for not ruining that. So I'm holding on to that one. And yeah, just generally speaking, like this is a decent kit to do it in as well. Like I think that's a nice looking shirt. We a weird data point. We've always done pretty well when we've had a collar on the shirt.
Right.
For some reason. Yeah, both times promoted with a collar on the shirt. And then got the gold inset as well that year. I think most teams had that, the white with the gold inset. So the print on the back looks nice as well. Can't wear this anymore. I've grown a little bit since 2005, 2006.
That is a common theme on the podcast. People say, "Oh, I did love this kit when we were wearing it." But... Okay, so I'd written a couple of notes about that team from 05-06. Obviously, Steve Coppell, the manager, and I remember being a Wolves fan in that season. We were in a very weird point, very transitional between our first Premier League season and then when we next got promoted a couple of years after this. And watching Reading play at Molineux that year, they seemed like a Premier League team in waiting. And there's just so many stars in that team. But who were the main players then?
Probably the toughest question I'll ever answer, because picking stars from that team, you'd almost put like an equal, not even 11, like 14, 15 players. I think the ones that stand out most to me, Marcus Hahnemann in goal, who you know well, obviously, I would imagine, the connection between the clubs. When he came in, he'd been at the club for some time at that point. It wasn't his first season by any means. But he had started to turn things around to start this like era of the modern great goalkeeper at Reading. It's a position we've been pretty blessed with the exception of a couple of duds in the last couple of years. And he kind of started the latest iteration of that. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that he was the first. We've had, Shaka Hislop, Steve Dath in the past. But yeah, Marcus Hahnemann was just solid as anything at the back there. You could just count on him to bail you out. So we didn't concede too many that year. In terms of your stereotypical like midfield engine, a partnership of Steve Sidwell and James Harper will very rarely be beat. They were just telepathic connection between the two of them and just complemented each other perfectly and set everything up. I have to mention Bobby Comby. You may have noticed he's on the back of my shirt here. He signed the season before and didn't have a particularly great first season, but I just really liked how he played. And I was like really excited about him. And 05-06 was when he just broke through and did what we knew he would do. A left winger, could cross the ball, scored some goals. It's just a player. I haven't seen a winger that I liked more than him before or since. He's just a great player, and funnily enough, he's known pretty well over here with being a US international. So it's the one reason when I say I support Reading, fans over here know who I'm talking about because of Marcus Hahnemann and Bobby Comby. And then again, I don't want to leave anyone out because everyone was great, but you have to talk about that strike force. Like we had Kitson and Doyle, Kevin Doyle and Dave Kitson. Those two of my favorite strikers ever. If one of them wasn't available, you had Leroy Lita, who was just in sensational form around that time. And then as a fourth striker, you've got Shane Long, who was very, very young. First season coming through, did some important goals here and there, salvaged our unbeaten record away at Derby, notably. And you see what he's gone on to do. So, just the fact that we had all of those there at the same time was outrageous.
There is quite a connection between Wolves and that team. We're just looking through it earlier on. We had Hahnemann, obviously. Then Inga Marson as well, Ivor Inga Marson. We'd had previously to you. And then, of course, Stephen Hunt. Was he in that team, Stephen Hunt, or did he come slightly after?
He was came off the bench frequently. He was back up to Bobby Comby. But a critical part. Like, it's funny. Like, it's the only team I've ever known where being a backup didn't mean anything negative. Like, just came on and just offered something different, but just as important. He was in that team. Love Stephen Hunt.
And then what was really impressive about that team is that the following season they didn't sort of let it go to their heads, or they just carried on going. Was there any sort of change in the style of play or anything like that that happened in that time, or was there any sort of bump in the road, or was it pretty plain sailing up to 8th in the Premier League?
We were surprised that we finished that high, but it wasn't a huge change. There wasn't a load of changes in personnel. We saw Ki Hyun came in.
Another Wolves
the most nice
link.
Yeah, and quality player as well. So it is actually funny, the number of links between our clubs. We're very distant at the moment. The chances of us meeting in the league don't seem too high right now, but through the early 2000s and up to that squad especially, seemed like we were always playing you. So that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it wasn't a huge change in how we played. The key to that team, and there's a great book about that era called "The Sum of Its Parts" by a Reading fan, John Keane, and it talks about how any one of those players wasn't some superstar. There wasn't some like moment of magic from somebody that turned the game necessarily. It was this amazing team that played as a team. And when you put all of them together, what came out was way more than the individual value added up. And that kind of carried on into the Premier League. Like with that first game, it looked like, oh, we've gone up and we can't handle it in the first half. And then you saw what happened there. We turned it around and then just some amazing results that season. And I feel very lucky. Like I moved away after that. Like I was there for 05-06. I was there for that first Premier League season. And there was just something special about how they played. It was really a magical time to be a fan.
Yeah. And just a word on Steve Coppell then, because he was the manager for a couple of seasons. What did he input to that team?
Everything. Like the mentality he had and the way he handled players and his approach. And actually before 05-06, he brought in some people to work on like the psychology of the game, the mental game, which I think is, to this day, I don't know why we haven't done that again, because I think recent Reading squads have struggled with their mentality. So, let's bring that in again. That clearly worked. Just his experience in the game, like complete respect from every player towards him and doing what he wanted. And then his methodical approach, like didn't get carried away, didn't look at the table, always was just preparing for that next one and setting people up and being willing to change. Like things weren't working. He had a plan B. I think we're the second club to do it, because I think Crystal Palace do this as well. But we refer to him as Sir Steve for a reason. Like he's definitely the best manager we've ever had. Will he ever be topped? It would take a lot of doing. Yeah.
I think it's quite rare, isn't it, for a manager to be so revered in two separate clubs. I think it's credit to him. Let's have a look at your next kit then. So this is a non-Reading kit. Let's have a look at what you've got.
Cool. So this one is Nagoya Grampus 8. It's the last season's kit here.
Oh, wow.
So no printing on this one, but just one of these. So I thought quick aside, I've been listening to your other podcasts of this series, and I know a number of people have gone for the NFL jersey at this point. I'm not having any of that. I've lived here for 13 years. No, like I don't like. It's a decent game if you can find the patience to wait for the 30 seconds of action every 5 minutes. But anyway, so I've kept it with football. But the reason I picked this one out is I'm not sure of relative ages of your listeners or you or anyone else, but when I was about 7-8 years old, Gary Lineker went out to play in the new J League.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
Well, I can't remember, but I knew as soon as you said Grampus 8, in my head triggered Gary Lineker. I knew that he played there, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a big club for the 90s. Like if you're a fan, like following in the 90s, and I was young, but like still like just really happy memories of that time. You had Gary Lineker go out there, and it's like this big thing. Wow, Japan football in another country that isn't European. Wow. Again, forgive me, I was 7. And then you had obviously Arsene Wenger was managing there, and then he came to Arsenal, and that was a big move, like a big change of English football when he came in. So I always had in my head, like, Japan's cool, Grampus 8, that's a team I'd love to go see. So last year, my wife and I went out to Japan for the first time. We've been wanting to visit forever, finally found like the opportunity to do it. We went out there at the end of February in 2020.
Oh, no.
So you can imagine what happened. We got there just as the coronavirus thing hit, and we had everything like lined up to get tickets to go to a game, go see Grand Passaic play, tickets to Nagoya. Got a friend that lives in Nagoya. It was going to be great. Obviously, they shut down the league. It all went away. So this is my moment. I went into a store there and I bought myself a Grand Passaic shirt, so I didn't have to have no connection to the two. But just been watching them online, like in preparation. So we're going to go back. But yeah, it's just one of those where like it's weird to have a connection to a club you've never seen on the other side of the world. But fond memories of that Gary Lineker signing photo. He looks it's a classic 90s.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tragic story though, not being able to actually you went all that way, not being able to see them. So how is it in America? How easy is it to access all this worldwide football? Is everything free on television, or is there some leagues that are easier to access than others?
I would say today it's excellent. Whatever you want, you can get it. And it's not too expensive. Like every Premier League game I can watch. Championship, you get the occasional game on ESPN, for instance, to watch online. The iFollow system has saved me. Like when they launched that, I was straight on top of it. That's like 3-4 seasons now that we've had it for Reading. Being able to watch every game has been a really big thing for me over here. When I first moved over, like that was 2008, it was very difficult to keep up. Couple of Premier League games if you paid the right cable channel and paid the subscription. But yeah, these days it's a dream. Like any European league you want to watch, it's either included or very cheap to access.
So how's football changed then in the 12, 13 years that you've lived out there? What's the sort of view of it? Because America have done okay in World Cups, I suppose, recently, but not brilliantly. Is it going to keep on getting better, or is it, still behind the other major sports?
It's definitely still behind in the public consciousness, which is annoying because you look around. I've played in amateur leagues here. I've organised teams. I've participated in teams. Like there is a huge fan base here. People really into the game. Good players at the amateur level. Like it's not like you have those dreams of like, well, you come from England, you go over to America, and like you'll be the star on the. Yeah. No, I just as bad as I was in England. So not quite the dream move that you think there. But there's a huge swell of support for as they would say, soccer. Every major city, there's bars that show the games. Obviously, when you're not in a lockdown, but the support here is much improved and seems to grow every year. Like going into a new job, like back in 2008, 2009, I would say my favorite sport and the teams, and everyone would just be like, oh, okay. Now, almost every time I find a bunch of people that also love this game. I think in terms of like how the game is progressing professionally here, it actually had a meteoric rise throughout the 90s and into the mid 2000s, and it's actually started to drop off some very bad decisions in my opinion. The US national team was growing in stature and has really dropped off in quality in recent years, and everything they're doing around kind of grassroots youth football here is suffering. They're not investing in the right way, and it's a source of contention for those who know a lot more about it than I do. I generally stick to still trying to keep up with back home.
But of course, the female game over there, the women's game, is massive. They are the best team in the world, aren't they? Is that at all levels? Or do women tend to be more interested in it than men?
I think so. At youth level, like coming through school, like primary school, secondary school, it's very much an even split, both male and female. What I've seen is when it gets into late teens, early 20s, like kind of like university age, all the money at that level and all the prospects are in the traditional American sports. So the male focus tends to switch, like more impact on football, basketball, that kind of thing. Whereas for the female side, there is a really great path to do our football. Um, what I what I think is interesting is there has been a shift from when I first moved over. When I was talking about football, a lot of guys would be like, "Oh, that's for the ones that weren't tough enough to play, NFL or whatever." And now that's gone. There's not this like stigma. I'm sure there's parts of the south of the US that it's still there, but the average opinion, a lot more interest in it. But it's usually for the major clubs, like Man City are huge here, Spurs are big here, Barcelona, Real Madrid.
All right. Okay. Very good. So let's move on to the next part of the show then, which is I've asked you to send me a sporting photograph of yourself, and I'm intrigued to know what's happened here. So this is, I imagine you're on this picture. Are you somewhere on Wembley Stadium? Tell us the story here.
Yeah. So my career in terms of sporting prowess never excelled past Division 4 West of the Reading and District Sunday League, and my team only didn't get relegated because there was no division to go down to. But I did have this high point in my footballing career, which was 2007. So a youthful me is back row, one in from the left. The tallest one on the back, I guess, is an easy way to say it. This was through work. There was a charity game that they organised to raise money. A number of different companies participated in a tournament that was held at Wembley Stadium, which had just recently opened that year. Just a bit of fun. I feel like everyone got a medal. it was very. I got a medal, but I know we did really poorly, so that was a bit of fun. But the reason I remember this one fondly is this was actually the day after that England-Croatia game that led to England not qualifying for Euro 2008. And if you remember, all of the talk after that was like, "Oh, the pitch was in terrible condition," and that didn't help. I can confirm it was horrendous. Just like running through a farmer's field. So fond memories of this. I can say I played at Wembley, and we'll just skip over why.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that you found a discarded umbrella somewhere in the tunnel area.
Yeah, that would have been a better one. But good night out.
No, well, funnily enough, I have also stood on the centre circle of Wembley, and I remember explaining to my dad. I said it feels so surreal, and he said that you need to look at what surreal means. Surreal is like a the melting clocks picture, that sort of thing. That's surreal, things that can't happen. I said, yeah, but I'm standing on the centre circle of Wembley. That's something that can't happen. That's surreal. It's a beautiful ground as well. I mean, I know it's had a lot of criticism from the cost of it, and then the pitch was terrible for years and years. But it's much better than. I mean, I didn't go to the old Wembley, but it's much closer to the pitch. It's not quite as good as the Millennium Stadium for me. What's your view then? Of you must have seen Reading at the new Wembley.
Sadly,
unfortunately,
yes. Yeah. So I don't want to keep bringing up downer stories. So that was the first time I went to the new Wembley. The second time I went to the new Wembley was the 2016-17 playoff final, where we lost to Huddersfield on penalties. Flew back. That was our wedding anniversary. But my wife was more than happy to come back. She loves the game as well. So we flew all the way back. Got very excited about going to a playoff final, and didn't quite go to plan. So that's the last I'll talk about it ever again. But yeah, amazing stadium. Like, yes, there's plenty of things about it that I understand why people criticize in the past, but the sheer scale of it and it's a world-class stadium. It's very cool. I also didn't go to the old Wembley. I've got friends that did that have some nostalgia for it, but yeah, it's an impressive one.
I mean, as you've brought it up, I hate to bring you back to it, but playoffs are not Reading's thing, really, are they? We knocked you out in 2003 in the semi-final, but then you lost to Swansea in 2011, I think that was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So What is it? Have you just got this, like Sheffield United are the same? They just bottle it every time
Yep.
they get to that sort of stage.
Yep. The only ones that hate the playoffs more than us are Brentford. I think they've got a worse record, but we're definitely up there. I despise the playoff system. I don't get excited when we're in the playoff positions. How can we get to autos or forget the rest of the season, kind of a thing? I don't know what it is. There's something, you know, that old cliche in football where there's a team that always beats you. Like, it doesn't matter if like they're 3 leagues below you, they always beat you. And
We've got
there's
several
no,
teams like that.
yeah. So have we, unfortunately. It's one of those where it doesn't make any sense. Like, it can be 10 years apart. So there's like no players that were in both losing teams. It can be a completely different era, different leagues, but they just keep beating you. We have that voodoo, but it's playoffs. Like, different squad, different manager, different era, different type of football. We just seem to not succeed. So yeah, playoff is a dirty word in the Reading fans lexicon. I wouldn't bring it up. I will say that 02-03 season though, despite the fact that you beat us and went on, and congratulations to you. I'm sure you enjoyed that. That was actually one of my other favorite seasons. Like, that squad was great. One of my favorite players was leading the line for us, Nicky Forster. Him getting injured is actually probably why you beat us. I'm sure you remember the name.
Well, you played he played the first leg, didn't he? I'm sure.
Played the first leg and scored,
did he score?
And then got injured. Yeah. I maintain, and it doesn't have to be backed up by fact, but I maintain if he hadn't got injured, we'd have won that. So.
Well, you certainly had, I remember you had the better of that, the first half of the second leg. For some reason, we just sort of froze because, like you, we've had so many failed playoff successes that we just think, oh, we can't be ahead going into a second leg. What are we going to do? But we managed to pull through in the end. But that's the difference of having like Paul Ince and Dennis Irwin in your team, just that bit of experience. So I won't put you through any more playoff heartache. Let's move on to what looks like it will be quite a positive memory for you. Your second photo, so a sporting photo, your favourite sporting moment, and is that Dave Kitson sliding in there to put one past Middlesbrough?
That's correct. There? Yeah. So this is the first game in the top flight in Reading's history. As anyone that was around in 2006 will remember, didn't start particularly well. We were 2-0 down very early on to Middlesbrough, and it was one where I was back there again. Couldn't believe it. I'm actually watching Reading in the top flight. Never thought that would happen. It seemed like we would go close and then had no chance. Hadn't started well. 2-0 down. Middlesbrough fans were singing Premier League, you're having a laugh. You know, really rub it in. And this was the moment where Dave Kitson just wouldn't be stopped. He just pushed and pushed and pushed. And it was a scrappy goal. It's not going to go on any Puskas award, but he gets the ball over the line, grabs the ball, runs back, and just the stadium just lifts. Like you can just feel that energy around, which obviously, sorry to bring that up for everyone right now because it's what we're all desperate to get back to. But you know, that moment where everything just switches. This is the moment that started the comeback, and then obviously we went on to win it 3-2. We sang back Premier League. We are having a laugh. You know, it was a great afternoon, and just this one comes up. You know, your fan accounts that will post pictures on Instagram and memories and stuff. This comes up all the time, and every time I see this, I just get that little feeling inside of remembering back to that moment. So yeah, great day.
Yeah. Lovely. And just when you were saying then, you didn't think you'd see Reading play in the Premier League. This is not like Wolves fans thinking, we won't see Wolves play in the Premier League when we had to wait for nearly 20 years. Wolves had won the Football League at times. We'd been a top team. Reading had never, ever got to that point. So what was the lowest that you've ever seen Reading play at?
Lowest level I looked at was the old Division 2, so it would be League 1 right now. That's the lowest level that I watched us at. I mean, for a lot of our history, we were the old Division 3, the old Division 4 even. Reading is not a huge place. It is the biggest town in England. I like to remind everyone. It's not a city, so it's the biggest town. But it's one of those where, we're so close to London. A lot of the youth talent over the years went up to the big London clubs, like the best ones, and we had the small ground at Elm Park, and it's just one of those things where it just didn't seem very likely. I remember 2002, 2003, that season where we were heading for the playoffs, and obviously you remember it better than I do in terms of positivity. I remember driving into Reading with a friend of mine when it looked like we've got a chance of going up here. And he says to me, "Can you imagine if Reading become like one of those teams like just goes up and just stays mid-table, doesn't do anything, but they're in the Premier League? Can you believe that?" And we were like laughing at it, like, "Oh yeah, imagine that." And then a couple of years later, we get this experience. It's good times.
So just at time of recording, you're 5th in the championship. You're halfway through the season. You're on 40 points, I believe. Which is a pretty strong position to be in at the moment. Have you got any sort of hopes for the rest of the season? Do you think it's going to be a year?
I was a lot more positive in October when it looked like we had become like one of the best teams in the world. I think we're in with a shout for playoffs at come end of the season. I think autos are a little bit slipping away at the moment because it's no surprise the teams that are up there battling for that, and you expect they'll probably pull away. The biggest thing for me, like I said, I'm not sure if I want to finish in the playoff positions because I'm dreading it, but it would be very Reading that if they still don't let fans in to finally win the playoffs when no one can go. So that'd be very much like
maybe
us.
that's been the problem all this time, all the pressure from the fans.
You never know. Like one of our best starts to the season has happened when no fans are in the ground. So maybe it's our fault. I'll take the blame. That's fine. But I don't know. I don't know how the season will end. All I will say is we've had 5, 6, 7 years, even with the playoff season, like we outperformed to get there. Like we were inconsistent. We had some terrible results at the season. For years, we've had a pretty poor experience following this club on the pitch. And this year, no matter what happens, or this season, I should say, the team is playing really well. They care. They are going out of their way for each other. There's like some real exciting players. Michael Elise is outrageous. Like everyone's talking about him, and for good reason. How long we keep hold of him, who knows? But just the fact that we've had him come through our academy and is doing what he's doing. Lucas Joao is the striker we've been waiting for a decade. Like he's outrageously good. And then, a Reading type signing. The signings that work for us are the ones that come from lower leagues without too much expectation. Josh Laurent coming from Shrewsbury is outrageous. I talk how many episodes of our podcast that I've been on that I'm just raving about how he's one of the best signings we've had. Like people are probably sick of hearing that, but like he's the only new face we brought in over the summer, and him and Rinomota in that midfield have clicked to have this great partnership where we're not just letting teams run through the middle of us for a change, which has been nice. Just all across. Omar Richards, left back, probably. I know people get angry when we make this claim, but he's the best left back in the league. Very young player. Supposedly Bayern Munich are interested right now, and we're trying to get him onto a new deal. It's just, you look at that, and then you've got someone like Yaku Mate as well, who I just want to make sure that I mention him because he's been with us for some time, came from PSG's academy and kind of learned his game, went out on loan for a while. He's been our top scorer for like 3 seasons in a row. Never really gets the plaudits, but like he's out injured at the moment, and we're really missing him, and just someone that cares so much. Like he's like pure passion, and he's like his ability is just growing over time. He's like a really good player now as well, but it's just such a relief. Like whether we finish top 2, playoffs, top 10 even, if you look back at being a Reading fan the last like 7, 8 years, you're just so happy that we're even talking about that.
Just enjoying the football again. I know exactly what that feels like. So let's move on to the final part of the show then, and your mystery piece of memorabilia, something to impress me then, please.
Yeah, for sure. So again, I know that other people have got on your previous ones have like varied it a lot more. I'm a very one track kind of a person, so this is still Reading related, I'm afraid, but it's a little story that I'll tell you about. This is the shirt from the last time we got promoted,
Hmm.
11-12. So this is Jem Karachan's shirt, and it's been signed by four members of the squad. So
Nice.
the story behind this one. Great season. Love Jem Karachan. Really excited. He's just signed for Scunthorpe, I think. He's back playing after a long time out. So I'm very excited for him. Great guy. But this was just a shirt that I bought. Got his name on it for that season. I always pick a player most seasons. Just liked how he played, so I got him on my shirt. Had this amazing season, right down 19th, I think we were at one point, and then just went on this run and just stormed up and won the league. And at the end of the season, a number of the players came out to Las Vegas to celebrate promotion. A number of the squad were there. And I was living in Vegas at the time. That's where I was before Denver. And a friend that I worked with was kind of involved in like the VIP scene in the casinos, like making sure people get like concierge, basically, like VIP concierge, like taking people around, making sure they had what they needed, and catering to like celebrities and famous folk, rich folk and stuff. So he sends me a text and he's like, you're really big into football, right? Like, what's your team again? And told her, Reading. And he's like, oh, got some Reading players out that we're taking around today. Gonna get dinner. Gonna do. Do you have anything you want to get signed or anything like that? And I was like, oh my god, who is it? He's like, lists off the names. I was like, I can't believe it, Jim Carrot. So I meet him before he goes to work. I hand him that shirt. He goes off, sends me a picture with Jem holding it up to prove that it was him that signed it. Alex McCarthy, who's now playing a blinder at Southampton, he was in the squad. He signed it. A couple of others, and brings it back to me the next day, and he hands it to me, and I'm just like, oh, thank you so much. I'm like so grateful to him. Like, this is amazing. And he's like, yeah, God, they were just blown away. They were like, there's a Reading fan in Vegas. They all wanted to sign it, and they were like, why didn't you invite him out? And I was like, why are you telling me this today? Why didn't you tell me this last night when I would have dropped everything and run down, So funny little story that I like to joke. It's fine. Whenever I meet famous people, I usually clam up and embarrass myself. So it would have been it's just so funny to me.
Never meet your heroes.
Yeah, wouldn't have been good. But so now I have a special place. That was a great season and a little connection to home when I was
very good. Very good, and a very good podcast. Thank you very much for coming on, Dave. Really enjoyed it. So don't forget to go and check out Dave at ShakeFon on Twitter, and then Elm Park Royals podcast, the Reading podcast, over on, I imagine, all platforms, is it?
Yeah, I think we've hit all the big ones now. So yeah, should be anywhere you get your podcasts.
Lovely stuff. Well, thank you very much again for coming on, Dave, and don't forget to check him out. And we'll see you all next week for another episode. Thank you very much.